Hello, welcome to the Going Deeper live stream. Thank you for joining us. My name's Martin, and we're going to be talking for about 30 to 40 minutes, going a bit deeper on our latest teaching series, our January teaching series called Coming Together. And this teaching series is based on this book by John Ortberg called Everyone's Normal Till You Get to Know Them. Incredibly practical book, but it's a book that's based on the Bible, and that's why we've been doing it in our church. I'm going to welcome our guests now, David and Neil, who have preached in this series. So welcome, David. Welcome, Neil.
Good evening.
Great to have you all with us. I'm going to get you just to say a little bit about who you are, but just for you guys watching, please do comment in the comments below. Do say hi. If you have any particular questions or anything to say, then do share those below. And if we've got time, we'd love to respond to your questions if you have them. But first of all, David, hello. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Hello. Thanks, Martin. My name's David, and I'm one of the elders at the church. Been there about 10 years now. My wife will correct me. I always get that wrong. And the other thing I tend to do a lot is stack the chairs. I think it's a position of power, being able to decide who sits down and who stands up. But that's me.
Cool. Thank you, David. And Neil, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, good evening. I'm Neil. I'm also an elder at the church. Been going to Holy Baptist for over 25 years, I think it is now. So, yeah, a long time. And I always consider myself more of a doer than a thinker, and therefore been invited to something called Going Deeper. Well, it should be interesting. Let's see where it goes.
Well, we like to keep things simple, don't we, Neil?
Just as well, probably.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. Both of you have preached in this series, so it'd be good to get your insights, not only into what you preached on, but also on the rest of the sermons as well. David, you preached this morning, which was excellent, so thank you for that. And Neil, you preached part 2, so right. That was a few weeks ago now. As I said earlier, the series is based on this book, Everyone's Normal Till You Get to Know Them, by John Ortberg. I reckon there was probably a spike in purchases of this book in Hawley, because I know a few people that have bought this book. Did you two buy the book, or did you just make it up?
No, I bought the book.
Had you read his stuff before?
Yeah, I've read at least one of his other books before. Although now I can't think of its title. Probably his most is it if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. Is that one of his?
Yeah, that's probably his most famous one, I think.
Yeah.
I've had that one. I think I've read maybe a few of his books before, but incredibly practical.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and funny as well. I know that Becky, who put this together, we decided on this sermon series because coming out of Christmas, well, maybe some new people might be tuning in to watch our sermons on live. We thought we'd do something really practical that would be useful to whoever you are, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not. So that was the thinking behind this. But yeah, I thought what we'd do, guys, is we'll go through the different I could say episodes. They're not called episodes, are they? They're called sermons in the series, and just see what you thought about them. Have you do you have and which one your favorite was? It might be the one you preached, or it might be a different one. But week 1, that was me, and it was called "The Problem with People Is," and it started with this the hedgehog or porcupine's dilemma, where a bunch of hedgehogs are trying to gather to keep warm in a winter's night, but the closer they get to one another, they prickle each other, so they move further away. But the further away they get, the colder they get. David, are you a prickly person?
I
wouldn't get.
I don't think I am, but I know I feel prickles. I know I. Yeah.
Neil, are you prickly?
No, obviously I'm the nicest person ever. At least that's what I think, and my wife always agrees. Obviously, she's not in the room at the moment.
But
No,
she is on the comments.
I think I did think about it a bit, and my initial reaction was, you can't get close without being hurt. I'm quite happy sometimes not to get close to people. If I'm being totally honest and about myself, I'm quite happy in my own life, and it's probably only when I actually preached the second one and reading through it, it was it's God's plan for us to be in community. Then I was probably more challenged about the first sermon, because my initial thought was, well, actually, I'm quite good at being standoffish. I have a nice conversation about the weather and what you did last week, but I'm not naturally the greatest for getting really close to people. So yeah.
I think I'm okay with my own company. I'm not like desperate for relationships and friendships, but I guess I do yearn for that deeper connection with, not with everyone. There's some people I'd rather have little connection with, but that deeper connection with in a community. How about you, David?
I would rather, I wonder why, if God wanted us to be that close, he didn't just make it smoother and take away the quills from the porcupines. But I suppose one of the things we tend to do is to take the credit very quickly for things. And if you've managed to get closer to someone who does have quills and then it works, it can't have been you. And maybe you assign the glory to God. Like I said, you would rather not be there, but if you do get there and it works, it clearly couldn't have been you. Maybe this is how we remember that we need God.
Yeah. I think what was highlighted in this first sermon was, and I quite like this one, is that we find God in the midst of community. We don't find God out on a lonely mountainside on our own, although we do connect with God in that way. That ultimately God is found in his community, and the community is found within is the church, the body of Christ. And yet it's a fallen, prickly, messed up community that is not perfect at all, is it?
No, absolutely not. And the more we get to know one another, and I suppose more honestly, the more people get to know us, do we realise just how messed up and imperfect it is. We still find it difficult, don't we? Because I know that I'm not in any way anywhere close to being perfect or anywhere close to it, and I probably know that about you too as well, if you know what I mean. And yet still knowing each other as we do, we still sometimes find it hard to share with one another, and that close friendship deserves, because I somehow think you two are far better than me, when in all honesty, I guess we're as messed up as each other.
Yeah, I think that's we tend to, well, not everyone, but certainly many of us, including myself, thinks everyone else is better than them, and not everyone's like that. Sometimes they think they're the only ones that have got everything sorted, and everyone else. I'm thinking of, do you remember Hyacinth Bouquet?
Yes.
From Keeping Up Appearances, where everyone else was the problem, and yet she was absolutely perfect. And often we do that. We try and keep up appearances, don't we? That everything's okay. And that kind of brings us to our second sermon, which Neil, you spoke about, which was how to keep it real. It was about authenticity and acceptance.
Yeah.
And I love that bit you pointed out about veiled faces. Do you want to say a little bit about that and Moses?
Yeah, so for those that know their Old Testament really well, will know that God went into that Moses went into the presence of God, and as a result of that, his face shone with the radiance of God, and everybody came to look at him, just couldn't look at his face because it was so bright, and therefore he pulled down a veil over his head, so people it took off the brightness somewhat, but over a period of time, that brightness started to fade. But the Bible tells us that Moses kept the veil over his face, and the suggestion is, and probably scholars might differ on this, but the suggestion is that he didn't want people to know that radiance was disappearing. He wanted to keep up the pretense, as it was, that God's face and that God's appearance was still radiant in his face, although it was no longer the case. And the suggestion is that perhaps we put a veil over our faces so people can't really see us for what we are truly like, and we make it difficult for people to see the real us.
Yeah. Why do you think we do that, David? What do you think? Why do we tend to veil ourselves so much?
I think one reason might be that we don't quite like who we are, and so you don't want people to actually see that. So you put the veil on, which would be the opposite of Moses. And then Moses, then realizing his glory days were over, didn't want people to realize that, because I think he probably associated the status of that with, they will only like me if they still think I'm this individual. They'll only respect me. And that's yet another pitfall where you now carry on playing the game, and that because you're just scared if people knew who you really were, they would not value you as much.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we can be quite derogatory of maybe people that go into cosmetic surgery. I don't know anyone that's had cosmetic surgery, but we can kind of look that bit down on them. But in some ways, we all do some sort of cosmetic surgery to ourselves, maybe not in a physical sense, but in a way of masking ourselves, veiling our true self, because we don't want people to know what we're like or what we've done and what we do in secret. Yeah,
and I guess in different places in our lives, we pull that veil up or down, the more so. So there's no point me at home trying to be a different person to I am. I've now been married for over 35 years, and Angie knows me so well that if I'm trying to be somebody that I'm not, she will see through it straight away. And then you maybe think about our work situation, or maybe our church situation. And church should be as close as possible to maybe our home situation, where with our loved one, the person that understands us and accepts us and all the rest of it. But if I look back over my life, was I more real at church than work? I hope so, but I sometimes think not always. I try to maybe put up this appearance of that other people might think. I'd like people to think about me that isn't particularly true. I love that story. There'll be one bit of my sermon that everybody remembers, that story regarding the person who got the job at the zoo is the gorilla.
How many hits did that get on Instagram, Neil?
Yeah. Oh, now
4,000 what views?
Yeah. But yeah, it's a ridiculous story, but it's the ultimate of us both pretending so much that neither of us are even the slightest bit real. And it's just a reminder of we take our pretenses to the nth degree. It'll be where we finish up, and I'll be the gorilla and you'll be the lion.
If you haven't heard that joke, do look it up on our Instagram account, where Becky did a really nice video just for that joke. But I guess we should ideally be the same at home and at work and at church, in every aspect of life. We should be the same person, but in reality, we're not, are we?
No, I don't think so. I think we can put on various faces to suit the occasion when we fancy it. And
I guess it's a bit like, you get these. We love these celebrity fly on the wall. The jungle thing. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. It used to be Big Brother as well. When it's only so long that we can keep up a pretense before the real us starts to come through. And unfortunately, it's often those things that are less desirable, those things that we're not so proud of, that tend to emerge. It's often the people we are closest to We're closest to them because we spend the most time with them, and therefore they're the ones that we can be the most prickly with, I guess.
Yeah. Which brings us on to the subject of conflict.
Which it does, yeah. No, that was my sermon, conflict. I'm not good at conflict at all. Well, it wasn't about conflict. It was about how to deal with conflict, wasn't it? Rather than create conflict.
Yes,
and it was
absolutely.
to deal with it in a positive, constructive way. Because we can leave if we just leave it, then unfortunately, it doesn't resolve itself and things just get worse. So, and there were 7 steps to resolving. To healthy conflict resolution. 1, acknowledge the conflict. 2, own your responsibility. 3, approach, don't avoid the person you're in conflict with. 4, don't involve third parties. 5, use sensitivity. 6, use direct communication. And 7, aim at reconciliation. I actually did this sermon twice because I did it at Lee Street as well last Sunday. So that's quite fresh in my mind. David, how are you with dealing conflict? Say in work, I'm guessing there's occasion when maybe something's gone wrong. You will need to deal with it. Someone maybe hasn't acted in the way they should. Do you find that something easy? Do you find it easier at work than you do at home? How do you find things, David?
So I'm walking towards trying to resolve it, and I'm just not relishing every step, finding every reason not to do it. If I could avoid this, then you think of Christ, and what he went through. But I'm already saying, take this cup away from me, and it's only just trying to sort out somebody who didn't turn up for work, and it's I don't look forward to it. If I could avoid it, I would. But there are times when it's in your lap, so you're the pastor, Martin. Here, sorted, and you can't quite pass it to anyone else. But no, I don't enjoy going in. But it's great if it then is resolved. It's not every time you go and try to resolve it that it does, but I don't look forward to it.
No. How about you, Neil?
Oh,
you're no longer in work as such because you retired a couple of years ago, but
yeah, no, I'm the world's worst at. I avoid conflict at all costs. So my 7 steps are, I wrote them down. Number 1, say nothing. Number 2, and do nothing. Number 3, hope. Number 4, the other person. Number 5, does the same. Number 6, until hopefully it gets forgotten. Number 7, by both of us. And that's probably my natural reaction of conflict, is just I just hope it goes away. But as David says, I think in all of these series, we just have to remember we have Christ living within us. And it's not that I've got to change and be better at dealing with difficult situations and the rest of it. But actually, Christ within me will help me change and do what he would have me do. And I think when you realise that, it then suddenly starts to become a little bit easier. Not easy by any means. No. But, if when we go to speak to a person, we realise that we are doing the thing that Christ would have us do, and, we're trying to resolve a problem, and that's what Christ would have us do, then it does make it that little bit easier. I think we're more likely to have the right words and the patience and all the other things that maybe it takes, rather than either go steaming in or, as I would do, probably just run away from it. That's my natural reaction. At work, I avoided it until the point where it was unavoidable, and then I would deal with it. And I suddenly thought, well, why was I avoiding it for all that time? And most of the time, you would actually get a resolution that if somebody was doing something wrong, they were grateful that you told them because they didn't know. And not many people go and do things to upset you purposely. It's just because they don't know. And the same thing goes for us. I wondered actually, because I wonder how many people have come up to speak to you after that sermon, because you did let yourself open for people to come and resolve their conflicts
I did say that, didn't I? I said, "Oh no, I'm going to have a queue of people," and actually, I didn't have any.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I don't think that means that no one has any issue. I just think they weren't listening to the sermon, because I'm pretty sure there are things that I have done that have upset people, and maybe, like you said, it's easy to try and ignore it than it is to try and sort it out, and yet we can't ignore it, can we? Do you think there's a difference between, say, work and church?
Unfortunately, and it shouldn't be, and this is a terrible thing to say, I actually find sorting out conflict at work easier than I do sorting out conflict at church, which is a terrible indictment upon, well, probably me actually, because at church I'm dealing with Christians, and at work I may or may not be. I think I'm more worried about upsetting people at church, probably, whereas at work I was probably less concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to put up a comment that Jenny, my wife, put. She says, "Do you think being in a position of leadership makes it harder to make yourself vulnerable?" I'm guessing in a workplace, if you're the boss, and Neil, you had people working under you, I would imagine, and
I did, yeah.
Same for you, David, as well. Do you think you can put on that veil of I'm kind of the manager or the boss, whereas at church that's that's not as easy, and also possibly wouldn't go down too well. What do you think?
Go on, David, you answer.
I think it. Yeah, I think it might do. And then you find actually that when people realize you're vulnerable, all of a sudden you're so much more. You're not on this pedestal and so on. If you're able to come off it, they suddenly relate to you so much better. But yes, again, it's that mask thing. You've put yourself there, and you don't want to let the veil off, just in case they realize you're also human. So I'm not sure whether it's what people put on us or whether it's what we think we ought to be in front of them. I should be this brave know-it-all, rather than it's the man thing, isn't it? I'd rather not ask for directions because surely I know how to get there. And then 3 days later, you're still going around in circles. It might make it more difficult, but it also might be the sort of individual you are, which also then plays into it.
Yeah.
I
think, Neil, in your sermon, you picked up on the idea that actually we don't be completely like open with everyone, because we can overshare, can't we? Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I quite like the model that the thing I said in the sermon, the model that Jesus had. He had the Bible tells us that Peter, James, and John were the sort of the inner circle, if you like. He seemed to divulge and be closer to those 3 disciples, and then he had the sort of second layer of 12 disciples that were his close friends, and then maybe there was a third layer of sort of all the believers and people that knew him. I sort of just likened that to maybe a church life where we have 1 or 2 people, and probably our partner, if we have a partner, might be one of them. But if not, we've got a couple of people that we feel very confident in, we're close to, we know we can trust them, and we'll divulge things to those people that perhaps we wouldn't divulge to a greater number. And then maybe there's a sort of second level, which if we know, where I think house groups are absolutely vital to the church. If you're not a member of a house group, if you come to the church and you're not a member of the house group, I would very much recommend that, because that will then give you that maybe 8 or 9 people that over a period of time you'll get to know really well, and you will share at that slightly deeper level. And then there's the wider church, where perhaps we won't share our innermost secrets, but we can aim to be just a little bit more of ourselves than maybe we are at the moment.
Yeah no, thank you for that. And that kind of brings us on to last week's sermon, week 4, which Becky pre-recorded for us because she was unwell. I have to admit, I finished watching this afternoon because I was away for that Sunday, and that's how to do the hard thing Is that the right one? Yeah, How to Do the Hard Thing, and it was about I loved it. It's about It was Nathan and Joab.
David, King David.
King David, yeah. And how one was a good friend and one was a great friend, and one was a good friend in that they just didn't ask any questions and just did it what David was asking, whereas Nathan was a great friend because he knew who David was called to be, and he pulled him up on something he had done wrong that was stopping him from being the king that God had called him to be. And I love this idea of accountability groups. I remember I was in an accountability group in my 20s with a few guys, and I really enjoyed that. Have either of you two ever been in accountability groups? Are you in accountability groups? David?
No, can't say I have been. No.
I find sometimes I have a tendency to overshare sometimes, and I can find some blokes that I share with, you can almost see them physically recoil from that kind of conversation. Whereas an accountability group is some guys some great friends that you can be honest and open with, and they're not going to recoil, but actually going to be there to listen and support and to hold you accountable. So I really like that. But it's difficult to be vulnerable, and it's difficult to find people to be vulnerable with. Is that your experience, or is it just something you've never really felt the need for?
Yeah, I think I find it difficult to make myself vulnerable to other people. Other than Angie, who I say would know me inside out. There are people that one or two close friends that I would share on a different level to others, perhaps. But I wouldn't say that on a regular basis. Yeah.
How about you, David?
I think it's the same. A few people who I kind of went to school with and very long friendships, people who've known you much better than any others. And one or two of them, yes, it's so much easier to open up to because they already know most of the story anyway. But I don't know whether it's a thing that as you grow older, it's a little bit more difficult to have those sorts of relationships. Mm-hmm. Because if you're, goodness, in your 50s and you meet someone for the first time in church as a casual acquaintance, the chances are it'll take a bit of time before you open up enough to know that individual. Mm-hmm. So perhaps even the accountability groups are people who either you gel with very quickly or you've known for a while, I think.
Yeah. We were talking about this in our house group this week, and the question came up is, do women find it easy to share with one another than men do?
Now, that's a good. Quickly write in the comments, guys.
Now there's three men on this meeting. I'm not sure we're the best place to answer that, but my overall feeling is, without trying to generalize too much, is that I think women are better at sharing with one another. But,
Michelle says no.
Oh well, there we go.
Yeah. Is it a man-woman thing? Is it just a personality thing? Is it just a human thing that we find it difficult to? You won't get those people that share too much, whereas the majority of us just don't share enough. And I wonder if you talked about, Neil, about Jesus having his close three. There was a 3, and then there was the 12. Well, I wonder if we're more comfortable with the idea of 12, friends that we're kind of fairly open with and have a good time with, and we might share prayer requests with, a bit like a home group. But actually, that idea of having a close, just couple of friends is a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And it just comes back to the just read the comment.
Without dropping women in it, we can talk about most things, but it can be still at a superficial level. So Jen agrees with Michelle.
Okay, I'll stand corrected. Yeah, and it comes back to the point, and it keeps sort of coming back to this point, is that if we think it's all down to us to do, then we will find it very difficult. You know, if we're asking Jesus to help us to be honest and open and, you know, live in community, then I think, you know, we stand a chance of making small steps. And I think that's the way to go, isn't it? I don't suppose any of us are going to change our personality overnight, but we perhaps can start to make small steps with small things that we share with and friends, you know, in the power of Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess it's about maybe if we do want that, we can pray for it and pray for those people to come in our lives. I wonder how much accountability groups can be organized. You know, I remember it when I was in my 20s, the minister decided to set up accountability groups, prayer trips, and he said, you know, find someone you want to be with, a couple of people, and if you can't, I'll find someone for you. You know, is that possible? Can we have that intentionality that, you know what, I may not be best friends with you, but I can be in an accountability group with someone? Do you reckon that's possible? What do you reckon, David?
I think I'd agree with what Jen said. You'd be there, but it would be superficial.
Yeah.
It would seem as if you'd shared, and you'd become a bit more skilled at doing that. It's the mask going up again, but you become quite skilled at doing that.
But do you reckon it's the first step? Do we not take that first step with the intention of going deeper? It may, it's the title of tonight, but you know, this idea that actually, if I want to get here, then maybe I need to intentionally start increasing the depth of what I'm sharing. And maybe we just tend to circle.
I don't know. I've been trying to find a way to segue with this one into it, you know, with the conflict. So I've sometimes wondered why, you know, bits of the Bible weren't left out to just make it look like a lovely, lovely book where nobody ever had any conflict with anyone. But all those parts were put in. So you think about Peter, who was one of that inner circle with Christ and then became the leader of the church. And then you get into the book of Acts and Paul pulls him up and says, hang on, Peter, you were eating with Gentiles, and all of a sudden the Jews come back and you make like it didn't happen. So this is Peter putting the mask back on, you know, trying to make like nothing happened, and Paul pulling him up and going, wow. So Paul will be that great friend rather than good friend.
Yeah, definitely.
And then again, I think sometimes if what you want is somebody who's going to tell you what you want to hear, I'm not sure that's accountability.
No.
And sometimes we go to people because they know they'll tell us the truth. I'm not sure you can make that. I can't suddenly impose someone like that on you. That's someone you end up respecting because you know they will tell me the truth. So I think you find them.
And that's something Becky picked up on it in her sermon, the idea that you can't just go up to someone and tell them you should be doing this. You need to be someone that they've already sought advice from. And Jen says you need to feel confident in their confidentiality, non-judgmental, gracious, and therefore able to trust. And that's possibly something key, isn't it? You need to have had that prior relationship to build up the trust. You can't suddenly manufacture trust and accountability. And if it's someone you don't know, you're not going to listen to them. Well, they don't know me. How can they make a comment about that in my life? They don't know me at all. Tricky. It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's this whole idea of community. It's an ideal that we're working towards, but we tend to get in the way.
Everyone's normal till you get to know them.
Exactly. Everyone's normal till you get to know them. David, the final part this morning's was the secret ingredient, gratitude. And you shared that great story from the Gospels of Jesus at Simon's house with the woman of a bad reputation coming in and being very attentive to Jesus, much as Simon's discussed. Do you want to say a little bit about that story and what the talk was about?
It's about Jesus being invited to the house of Simon. We're not told very much about who Simon was. I'm assuming you'd call him a Pharisee, but I don't think we're given that detail. But he's invited to this as a guest to this house. And there's a lady who you could argue it says she lived a life of sin, and she comes in again. I doubt she was invited, but then she does something rather peculiar, at least to us. She washes Jesus' feet with her tears and wipes them with her hair, and the guest is a bit indignant. So the host is a bit indignant about this, not so sure about Jesus, and Jesus reads his thoughts. I thought it was interesting. It said Simon thought this, and Jesus answered him. And it's not like he even said it. And Jesus then gave him. He talked about a little parable of people who'd been in debt and how somebody who'd owed a lot more and was forgiven would love more. And then kind of told Simon about the woman and what she'd done, and told her sins were forgiven. And that was most of the story. And my bits of my take on it were from John Ortberg's book and the insights he gave. And he lets you into Jewish society to begin to let you understand that Jesus was actually being slighted by his host. And the lady came in and did what the host probably should have done. But then there were other bits just trying to relate to it, looking at our own lives. And who did we identify with the most? And was it with the woman, or was it with Simon, when you sit back and look and how judgmental we truly are? And even Jesus' disciples, the inner circle, felt they were the inner circle sometimes. And James and John saying, "Can we sit at your right hand and your left while all the others are just..." And there's that tendency with us to assume we're better than. I find I have to pull myself up now and again, well, more than now and again, very, very often, when you know in yourself you've again judged someone, and very often you've got it wrong. But it's just that feeling. I don't know why. Whether it's, I don't know why. I can't explain it. But I think it's there in most of us. And there was a bit I didn't quite remember to say this morning, and it was, even when Jesus was talking to Simon, Jesus didn't make him feel guilty, force him to. Jesus just gently told him, "I wish you could see it through my eyes." It was still left to Simon to make the decision. And some of us, even after seeing it through Jesus's eyes, will still choose not to let it go, not to forgive, not to. But Jesus won't force us. And that's another thing about him. He lets us get there, but he will not force us to take that next step.
Yeah. Thank you, David. It was a really good sermon, and a really good story from the Gospels. And I guess all these sermons that we've been talking about, all these different subjects about being unveiled, about the importance of community, about being open with one another, about dealing with conflict well, and also the fact that none of us are normal. And David, kind of picking on that, is that we need the humility to realize that we're not better than anyone else, that we all have our prickles. John Ortberg, on his final chapter, the chapter is called "Normal at Last." And the fact is that all of this is pointing to a time when all our prickles will be gone, and we will be in a community with Jesus at the center, when there will be no conflict, and we'll be in this amazing community of love. And we call that heaven. And John Ortberg kind of picks up on those interesting images we have of heaven, of worshipping all the time, which that sounds really boring, doesn't it? Just a never-ending worship service. I couldn't even imagine doing. You get some people do all-night prayer sessions, don't they? That's just like, oh my goodness. So an eternity of prayer sessions and worship, I think, would be a bit boring. Or he talks to someone whose idea. And Neil, this may be the idea of heaven would be golf.
Well, yeah,
a game of golf.
Yeah, but heaven is perfection, and my golf is anything but. So,
but it might be.
Maybe my game will improve.
Yeah, it'll probably be really short. You'll just get lots of holes in one. You just get through it really quick. But I love this idea that what we should be doing, particularly in our church community, we should be kind of having a bit of heaven in our communities. We talks about in the Bible. It talks about the fact that we see through a glass darkly. we look forward to a time when things will be sorted, but actually they aren't now. We're in a broken world, a fallen world, but we just pray that maybe we can help people to experience something of what heaven will be like through the community that we have. How close do you reckon we are to being like heaven in Hawley Baptist Church?
I don't suppose we're 1%, are we? The bit that I liked in his book, when I quickly sort of flicked through that sort of last chapter, is when we think about heaven. He gave the example. I've never heard this before, but I did quite like it. It's a bit like when the baby is in the womb and everything is dark, and they think, this is great. They've got everything they need, and then they suddenly are born and come into this amazing world, and it's from complete darkness into the light of the world. And I think it'd be the same for us, is that we think we might be somewhere close to heaven when actually we haven't got a clue of just how great it is. I have no idea what heaven's going to be like, but I know it's going to be absolutely amazing and unthinkable of. So yeah.
I just think it's going to be way beyond anything we have now. But when we pray the Lord's Prayer, we pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I have to say, in this place, in our church, in our community, we want Holy Spirit to give us an experience of what a heavenly community may be like. Yes, we've got all our different issues and stuff, but that's what we're continually, or should be continually heading towards and working towards, is trying to be normal, which is trying to be like Jesus, I guess. David, what do you think as we come to a close?
I'm going to start with a little bit of levity and then something a bit more serious. But there's this joke about these two guys. I suppose they were like an accountability group, and they used to go to the gym and really work out and do everything to get fit and eat the right sort of things. And then they both died and got to heaven, and it was just brilliant. And they looked at each other and said, "Why were we wasting time to get here? What was that all about?" All the fitness side of things, and the I suppose the slightly more serious one is I kind of look at Christ coming down to earth from the Garden of Eden through the Old Testament to Christ coming, is of a God who values us so much. He's just done everything, and then John 3:16 tells you the length he's gone to bring you back to him. When you've got someone who values you that much and whose presence is nothing but joy, the thought of you finally going home to be with that individual, it's got to be more than you can think of or ask of. And so as you said, we can only imagine, but we can't even imagine it. However, that individual, the little he's shown us about himself here, we just have to accept this is going to be worth going to, just from the taste we've had here. Whether that's real to us each day, I don't know. But again, if Christ is the center, perhaps it will be real while we're here.
Yeah.
I guess the important point is that we work towards what it is going to be like in our small way, and don't just wait for the moment where heaven starts, or that real life starts from the moment we accept Jesus. So let's and I guess that's the challenge of this sermon series, isn't it? Is so what do we do? What do we do as we finish it?
Yeah. No, thank you guys. Thank you so much for spending your time talking about this. Just to those watching, do grab a copy of this book if you haven't done so already. There you go. That's slightly a more recent cover, I think. I got mine secondhand from Amazon, but it's a really good read. It's an easy read. And if you don't want to read it, you can just watch back the sermons, and that'll save you a lot of time. But yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, Neil. And guys, if you haven't done so already, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do connect with us on our Facebook page, and we'd love to get in have a chat with you if you get in contact with us. And there is an email. Got questions? hawleybaptist.org.uk. I don't know if I've got a little... Oh, look, here we go. So if you do have any questions or any comments, then you can contact us through that email address, and we'd love to get back to you. So, yeah, thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.